A lot of people still believe that what separates winners from common people is motivation. But if motivation really were the key, why do so many inspired people remain stuck? The truth is uncomfortable. You are not stagnant because you lack strength. You are stagnant because you are waiting to feel something that will never arrive in the way you imagine. And this is exactly where everything changes. Because those who do not wait for desire, they repeat actions. He knows it hurts to admit it, but life does not reward those who think, wish, or plan too much. It rewards those who repeat, those who wake up and do, those who adjust the path while walking, those who accept that the world is not at all interested in your excuses, but responds immediately to your consistency. But I don't know where to start. You don't need to. Start small. Start crooked. Start without clarity. Clarity comes after. Repetition comes before. And maybe no one told you this, but there is an exact moment when life changes, when you stop waiting to feel and start acting despite how you feel. This is the moment when your inner power awakens, when self-discipline stops being a struggle and becomes a lifestyle, when you realize that your identity shift does not happen in meditations or epiphanies. It happens in the boring repetition that almost no one wants to do. And here goes the most counterintuitive part of all. The less you depend on motivation, the faster your motivation increases. Yes, it comes after the action, not before it. And when you understand this, everything around you starts to respond. Your body, your mind, your results, your confidence. Because repeating the basics every day is infinitely more powerful than doing something grandiose once in your life. This audiobook is not about feeling. It is about doing. It is not about waiting. It is about building. It was created to guide you along the path that few have the courage to take, the path of repetition, consistency, and the silent discipline that makes you unstoppable. Here, you will not find pretty phrases about believing. You will find practical weapons to transform yourself. The question is simple. Are you willing to stop waiting? Are you ready to repeat until you become someone else? If you are, then take a deep breath, because from now on, your path changes direction. Most people wait for motivation to come like someone waiting for a delayed bus, and still complain when it does not show up. But the one who dominates his own path understands that motivation is unstable, while relentless consistency is a daily construction. He learns that mood does not determine commitment, and that self-discipline is born exactly on the days when the body grumbles. It is in this contrast that the difference appears. And curiously, it is where the next step always reveals itself. He realizes, with time, that trusting "today I am excited" is like playing roulette with his own future. That is why people who are truly strong do the basics even without sparkle in their eyes, because they have already understood that inner power is born from the simple act of showing up. It is not glamorous, but it is powerful, because when he comes back tomorrow, even tired, he is creating something invisible, identity. And identity, when it changes everything, as you will see in the next point. Consistency works like a spiritual muscle. Each repetition strengthens it, even if no one sees. He applies identity shift in practice by choosing to act like the person he wants to become, not like the person he is today. It is almost like an actor who rehearses the role until it becomes his own truth. At first it seems strange, but later it becomes natural. And it is precisely in this process that another deeper layer appears, guiding toward the next understanding. On difficult days, he creates simple rituals that do not depend on motivation. For example, waking up and drinking a glass of water, walking for 5 minutes, opening a book for 2 pages. Is it little? Is it nothing? Maybe for an ordinary person. For someone who chooses the path of relentless consistency, this is a sign of greatness. Because the body follows the mind, and the mind follows the rhythm that you impose. And this rhythm opens an interesting door to the next topic. He also understands that discipline is not born from giant sacrifices, but from small tests won. When he feels resistance, he does not negotiate with it. He just starts. A 10-minute workout, a text of 3 lines, a table organized in 2 minutes. Action generates movement, movement generates clarity. And clarity generates momentum. And as this momentum grows, it becomes easy to see why consistency wins in the long run. With time, He learns not to depend on inspiration to be productive. He creates systems, alarms, simple lists, morning rituals, small rewards. None of this is glamour, but all of this builds self-discipline. And this discipline creates a kind of freedom that many people cannot even imagine exists. It is a silent, almost secret freedom, but one that prepares ground for the next understanding about the process. And when someone asks how he manages to maintain this rhythm, he responds that it is not superhuman strength, but small decisions repeated. He treats his tasks as commitments to himself, not as external obligations. He does not waste energy negotiating with excuses. He just starts. And this simple start leads him directly to the next principle, where repetition becomes an ally. The truth is that, after a while, he realizes that consistency is less about what he does and more about who he is becoming. Each small action proves to himself that he is capable of taking control, that his inner power is real and growing. And it is this internal confirmation that paves the path to understand why consistency always wins, something that connects deeply with the next topic that is coming. He realizes that trusting his emotions is like trying to drive a car using the rearview mirror. You can even see something, but you do not see the road ahead. Emotions change too fast to be a compass. Meanwhile, relentless consistency creates a firm road, where each step has direction. He understands that great results come from repeating what works, even when it seems too simple. And this begins to silently shape his identity shift. With time, he discovers that high-performance people do not wait to feel good to act. They act, and only afterwards the feelings align. He realizes that self-discipline is built exactly in this uncomfortable interval between "I don't want to" and "I did it." And when he does it, he feels his inner power growing like a flame protected from the wind. This strength gradually leads him to the next level of understanding. He begins to see consistency as the fundamental brick of self-confidence. The more he keeps his word to himself, the more solid he feels inside. It is as if his actions, especially the small ones, were confidence deposits placed into his own identity. In a short time, he stops thinking, "I hope I can," and begins affirming, "This is part of who I am." And this opens space for something even deeper. It is here that he notices that repetition is not only a strategy, it is an emotional transformer. Doing something every day creates rhythm, and rhythm creates safety. He feels this even in simple activities. Writing a little, reading 5 pages, a quick workout. The size does not matter, the continuity does. This continuity calms the mind, reduces anxiety, and increases clarity. And this clarity prepares ground for the next point. Motivation, although useful, is seasoning, not food. He understands that letting his progress depend on motivation is like trying to live only on coffee. It works for a while, but later becomes chaos. Consistency is different. It is slow, constant, and reliable fuel. When he chooses to rely on this fuel, he discovers that his evolution begins to follow a pattern. And this pattern connects directly to the next step of the process. He also realizes that consistency creates something that no one can steal: internal credibility. It does not matter if the world believes in him, if people understand his routine, or if they value his efforts. He knows what he is building. He knows the silent effort that no one sees. And this discreet certainty increases his inner power. This force leads him naturally to question what really keeps some people from acting. And this connects him to the next topic. When observing inconsistent people, he notices a pattern. They trust too much in emotion and too little in structure. He decides to invert this logic. He creates systems, so he does not depend on his own will. Alarms, fixed schedules, minimum habits. He organizes himself to act regardless of mood. And in this process, he distances himself from the old unstable identity and gets closer and closer to the identity shift he desires. This directs him to the next discovery. Deep down, he understands that consistency wins because it is unstoppable. The pace does not matter, the continuity does. He sees that even bad days become useful when there is movement. And this brings a kind of peace that only those who practice can perceive. A peace that shows that acting is always better than waiting. And this perception opens an interesting point. Why do so many people still procrastinate? The answer leads directly to the next topic. He begins to notice that procrastination is not born from laziness, but from disguised fear. Fear of not being good enough, fear of failing, fear of not knowing where to start. This fear creates a mental fog that paralyzes him, even knowing what needs to be done. That is when he decides to use self-discipline to see beyond the fog. He understands that his inner power only grows when he faces things, not when he avoids them. And this internal change begins an important identity shift. He learns that the secret is not seeking courage, but reducing the weight of the task. When he breaks something big into tiny steps, he notices the resistance evaporates. Instead of writing an entire chapter, he writes only 3 lines. Instead of training for an hour, he starts with 5 minutes. Too small for the brain to complain. And it is exactly this beginning that unlocks movement. Movement that will generate something even bigger. At this point, he discovers the 2-minute rule, one of the most effective weapons against procrastination. If something can be started in 2 minutes, he does it immediately. Sending a message, tidying the table, opening the book, putting on shoes. Minimal action creates a domino effect. The mind responds to the gesture as if saying, "We already started, we can continue." And this small victory lights the spark of relentless consistency. When thinking begins to block him, he does not try to reason more, he acts. He realizes that overthinking is like turning the steering wheel with the car turned off. It makes noise, but it does not move. Action is what turns the engine on. And when the engine turns on, motivation naturally appears, almost like a bonus. This perception completely changes his relationship with time and prepares him for a new vision of the process. He also begins to identify his escape triggers. Sometimes it is the phone, other times the feeling of pressure. So he creates strategies, leaving the phone far away, using focus apps, or working in blocks of 10 minutes. Small protections that make it easier to stay on track. And these protections strengthen his inner power because they prove he can anticipate his own traps. This guides him to the next stage. To make the process lighter, he uses micro-rewards. After completing the minimum task, he allows himself a small pleasure, a coffee, a favorite song, a minute of conscious rest. It may seem silly, but it creates a dance between effort and reward that keeps the brain engaged. This dance helps him build relentless consistency without suffering. And slowly, he realizes something even deeper about discipline. Over time, he starts to like the feeling of starting before the desire arrives. This generates a powerful, almost silent confidence. He begins to see that the simple act of starting puts him light years ahead of those who keep waiting for inspiration. This constant advance reinforces his identity shift and shows that procrastination is not an invincible enemy. It is just a monster that loses strength when you turn on the light. And this light points to the next learning. He understands, in the end, that overcoming procrastination is not about being perfect, but about beginning. Beginning small, beginning tired, beginning without knowing everything. Each beginning proves that he has control. Each beginning strengthens his self-discipline. And these small victories form the foundation for something even greater, training discipline in a structured and solid way. And it is exactly for this next level that he now moves. He realizes that discipline is not a talent, nor a secret gift. It is a training, like any other. And just like in the gym, he understands that he does not start lifting 100 kilograms. He starts with little, but he starts. This small act repeated every day creates relentless consistency and reinforces the identity shift he seeks so much. He sees that self-discipline is not something distant. It is built in detail. And it is exactly in this detail that the transformation begins to reveal itself. To train discipline, he learns to create simple structures. Waking up at the same time, preparing the workout clothes the night before, leaving the desk organized for the next day. He uses the environment as a silent ally. Removing obstacles along the way is a powerful way to strengthen his inner power without depending on motivation. And these small actions, repeated, prepare the ground for greater lessons to come. He discovers that commitment is worth more than desire. On days when he does not want to train, he focuses on a commitment of just 10 minutes. When he does not want to study, he reads a single page. Instead of seeking intensity, he seeks presence. And this constant presence creates emotional muscles that are difficult to break. Little by little, he realizes that training discipline is less about doing a lot and more about never stopping doing. Internal dialogue also becomes an essential tool. Instead of saying "I can't," he switches to "What is the next step?" This simple question moves mountains. He begins to speak to himself like a mentor would speak to a student, always reinforcing the process. And by feeding the mind with clear direction, he notices his inner power expanding. This expansion naturally brings him closer to the next point. He also uses practical examples to stay aligned. If he wants to improve reading, he chooses books like The Power of Habit, Essentialism, or The One Thing. If he wants to improve financially, he practices small contributions in index funds. True discipline is practical, not theoretical. And when he sees results in small actions, he creates an internal confidence that pushes him even further forward. He understands that discipline is not rigidity, it is freedom. It seems contradictory, but it makes sense. When he trains self-discipline, he reduces unnecessary decisions. Without wasting energy choosing the obvious, there is space left for creativity and clarity. This mental lightness reinforces his identity shift and shows that discipline is not prison, it is relief. And this relief opens space to face something even deeper inside himself. When resistance appears, that desire to postpone everything, he sees it as a test. He does not fight with it. He acts quickly before it grows. A small, immediate step. This quick action works like a shield that he builds with relentless consistency. And each time the shield works, his confidence increases. And this confidence pushes him directly to the next topic. He ends up understanding that discipline is a cycle. Small actions, small victories, more consistency, more inner strength. He clearly sees that each disciplined habit is a seed planted for the future. And as these seeds grow, something new arises, the ability to overcome internal resistance without fighting with it. And it is exactly this point that begins to gain strength in the next topic. He discovers that resistance is not a common enemy. It is an invisible force that grows exactly when the task is important. Whenever he decides to act, an elegant excuse appears, an irresistible distraction, or that subtle doubt that seems harmless. But he realizes that this is just a test before evolution. And when he observes calmly, he sees that relentless consistency is the perfect antidote to this silent force. With time, he understands that resistance is stronger in the almost. Almost started the workout, almost opened the book, almost started the project. It is in this territory that most people give up. So he creates a simple and powerful strategy. Act before thinking too much. He realizes that his inner power strengthens when he begins quickly, without giving space for hesitation to grow. And this simple gesture completely changes the internal game. He notices that resistance loves when tasks seem too big. The more important the objective, the louder the internal voice saying later. So he breaks the task into micro steps, such as adjusting his posture, opening the file, organizing the table. This fragmentation reduces the strength of resistance and increases his self-discipline. And by repeating this process daily, he reinforces his identity shift without even noticing. Another important point is that he stops negotiating with excuses. He understands that each excuse comes disguised as logic. Today I am tired. I will do better tomorrow. The week is busy. But he notices that these thoughts are not truths. They are just distractions. So, when the excuse appears, he smiles and acts anyway, as if saying, "I heard you, but you don't command me anymore." This attitude brings him closer to a new level of clarity. He learns to use the body to trick the mind. When resistance appears, he changes the environment, stands up, drinks water, breathes deeply, tidies the table, takes one step. The body in movement sends a direct signal to the brain. We are starting. This simple trick unlocks tasks he had been avoiding for weeks. And this release creates a flow that connects perfectly with his moments of relentless consistency. To make the process even lighter, he transforms resistance into a game. He sets mini missions. Work for 5 minutes. Read 2 pages. Organize 1 drawer. By completing each mission, He releases dopamine and feels his inner power renewed. This sensation creates a positive cycle: action, victory, repetition. And when this cycle is established, resistance naturally loses strength. He also understands that resistance is a powerful indicator. If something causes a lot of resistance, it is probably exactly what he needs to do. He uses this information as an internal GPS, guiding him to the tasks that really matter. And by acting on these tasks, he feels his identity shift consolidate more and more. It is as if resistance, deep down, pointed his path, and this prepares the ground for the next topic. In the end, he notices that overcoming resistance is not about eliminating difficulty, but about acting despite it. He learns not to wait for courage, motivation, or total clarity. He acts even in doubt. He acts even in disorder. He acts even tired. And this rare ability leads him to an even deeper understanding. True power lies in the daily habits that eliminate decision fatigue. And it is exactly here that the next step begins. He begins to realize that success does not come from the big occasional efforts, but from the silent habits that he repeats when no one is watching. It is there, in the ordinary, that transformation happens. Each minimum habit, repeated with relentless consistency, strengthens his inner power. Little by little, he understands that his habits shape his identity more than his intentions. And this perception changes everything inside him, without announcement, without applause. He discovers that habits are a way of automating self-discipline. When something becomes routine, it no longer requires internal debate. Should I go? Should I do it later? These questions disappear. He creates simple rituals: waking up and making the bed, reading 5 pages, training for 15 minutes. Small but constant. And these rituals create a solid base for the identity shift he is building. He realizes that good habits eliminate decision fatigue. After all, deciding is tiring. Deciding what to eat, where to train, when to work, everything requires energy. When he turns these choices into habits, he frees mental space for what really matters. He feels his mind lighter and more productive. And this lightness creates a natural flow that connects him with the next level of the journey. To develop strong habits, he uses a simple technique: make what is good easier and what is bad harder. If he wants to read more, he leaves the book open on the table. If he wants to stop scrolling the feed, he leaves the phone far away. If he wants to train, he leaves the clothes ready. He manipulates the environment like an architect of his own life. And this daily architecture strengthens his inner power continuously. He understands that good habits accumulate like compound interest. 5 pages a day become 12 books a year. 15 minutes of training become a strong body in a few months. Small investments that seem insignificant today create impressive results tomorrow. And when he realizes this, his identity shift accelerates, because he begins to truly believe in the power of the small. He also learns that creating habits does not require perfection, but quick return. Missed one day, he returns the next day, without drama, without guilt. The mistake does not become identity. He just restarts. And this constant restart reinforces his self-discipline and keeps his relentless consistency alive. The immediate return to the habit becomes more important than the perfect sequence. To strengthen his habits even more, he uses small triggers: listening to a specific song before studying, using a 10-minute timer before starting something, quickly visualizing the benefit of finishing the task. These triggers create a sense of preparation and signal to the brain: now it is time to act. And this preparation leads him to the next point of the journey. In the end, he sees that habits not only build results, they build who he is. He stops being someone who tries and becomes someone who does. And this change is a deep milestone, as it determines his way of seeing challenges and opportunities. And it is precisely this mental strength, shaped by habits, that prepares him to face the invisible barriers inside his own mind in the next topic. He realizes that the biggest battles do not happen in the external world, but in the silence of his own mind. Doubt, perfectionism, and excessive thinking form a kind of psychological maze, where each corner seems like a reason not to start. He sees that these barriers are not real enemies, just projections. And when he activates his self-discipline, the path begins to become clear. His inner power grows when he understands that thoughts have no authority, action does. He notices that doubt is persistent, but it is not intelligent. It appears whenever he tries something new, as if it wanted to remind him of the old identity. But he decides to respond with relentless consistency, acting even while doubting. He discovers that doubt does not disappear before action, it disappears after. And the more he acts, the more his identity shift solidifies, proving that courage is not the absence of fear, but movement despite it. Perfectionism also tries to block him, whispering that it is not good yet. He realizes that perfectionism is not a high standard. It is fear disguised as excellence. So, instead of waiting for the perfect moment, he sends the email, posts the video, writes the first lines. He understands that perfecting comes after, not before. And this understanding frees him for a much faster pace of growth. Excessive thinking, on the other hand, tries to trick him with the illusion that thinking more is acting better. He discovers that this is a trap. Thinking beyond what is necessary is like endlessly warming up without entering the game. So he sets a limit. He thinks enough to make a decision, and then he executes. This change reduces anxiety, increases focus, and reinforces his inner power powerfully. To deal with these barriers, he creates small mental anchors. For example, when he perceives he is thinking too much, he uses the 5-4-3-2-1 technique and starts. When doubt appears, he recalls 3 recent victories he has already achieved. When perfectionism appears, he says, "Done is better than imagined." Simple but efficient, these anchors strengthen his self-discipline and pull him quickly out of paralysis. He begins to value progress, not perfection. Instead of seeking a giant leap, he seeks small visible confirmations. A page read, a task started, a short workout. Each micro-progress proves to himself that he is on the right path. This internal proof, repeated, reinforces his identity shift and dismantles the false narrative that he needs to be fully prepared to move forward. He also begins to notice that the mind creates stories to protect him, but these stories are not always true. This will go wrong. You are not good enough. It is better to wait. He recognizes these phrases as old echoes, not as commandments. And by recognizing them, he loses the fear. He acts with relentless consistency even with a noisy mind. And each silent action weakens this noise. In the end, he understands that overcoming mental barriers is a daily training. It is not about eliminating thoughts, but about not obeying them. He uses movement as a response, structure as an anchor, and his self-discipline as a guide. And by strengthening this internal posture, he realizes that he is ready to develop something even greater, a self-discipline so solid that it becomes unshakable. Exactly what the next topic brings. He understands that self-discipline is not born as a heavenly gift. It is built like a muscle, repetition after repetition. Each day in which he fulfills a micro-promise to himself, he strengthens his relentless consistency. He feels his inner power grow when he does what needs to be done, even without witnesses. And it is in this silent repetition that his identity shift becomes evident. Discipline stops being a task and becomes identity. He realizes that to have unshakable self-discipline, he needs to treat it as part of his lifestyle. Instead of trying to be disciplined today, he defines who he is. Someone who acts, someone who fulfills, someone who follows through. This subtle change transforms everything. And when self-discipline becomes part of his internal name, he acts without emotional effort. Discipline stops being a burden and becomes routine, almost automatic. He begins to simplify the environment around him. He removes distractions, organizes the desk, uses the phone far away, creates spaces that favor his best version. He learns that discipline is less about willpower and more about environment architecture. If the fridge is full of bad food, he eats badly. If the desk is a mess, he freezes. So he builds the right setting. And this setting feeds his inner power daily. To track his progress, he creates simple tracking tools, a marked calendar, a habit app, a minimum daily list. He realizes that measuring is not only controlling, it is creating clarity. Each mark is a victory. Each check is a reminder that he is on the path. This visualization strengthens his relentless consistency and prevents discipline from getting lost in the rush of daily life. Small numbers, big perceptions. He understands that discipline is not punishment, it is freedom. Freedom to choose his life, his results, his future. He laughs when he realizes that people think discipline is hard, but living without discipline is much more painful. He begins to see self-discipline as a form of respect for himself. And the more he respects himself, the stronger his identity shift becomes, an internal evolution that no one can take away. To reinforce this discipline, he creates intelligent rewards. After completing an important task, he has a special coffee, listens to a favorite song, takes a short conscious break. He does not treat himself like a machine. He treats himself like an ally. This internal partnership creates a healthy relationship with routine. And when routine is light, discipline becomes natural. This brings him closer to the next point, dealing with relapses. He also understands that discipline is not linear. There will be bad days, failures, delays. But instead of using that as an excuse, he uses it as a lesson. He analyzes, what took me off track? How can I correct it tomorrow? He returns immediately to the track, without drama. And this ability to return quickly is what differentiates common discipline from unshakable discipline, and in a way, prepares the mind for the next topic. Deep down, he realizes that unshakable self-discipline is not a rigid force, but a flexible one. It bends, but does not break. It adapts, but does not give up. He becomes someone who does not stop, he just recalibrates. And by understanding this, he sees that relapses are not the end, but a natural part of growth. And it is this mature vision that opens the path to the next topic: how to deal with relapses without losing rhythm. He realizes that relapses do not mean weakness, they mean humanity. Everyone slips, even the most disciplined. The difference is that the strong return quickly. Instead of turning a mistake into identity, he turns it into curiosity. What made me fall? This question strengthens his inner power, because it leads him to adjust his route instead of punishing himself. And this intelligent lightness is what keeps his relentless consistency alive. He understands that the greatest danger is not making a mistake, but turning the mistake into a story. Stories like, I never succeed, I always fail, there is no point trying. These narratives are subtle poisons that destroy self-discipline. So he immediately replaces these thoughts with something realistic and powerful. It was just one day. Tomorrow I am back. Simple, direct, mature. This mindset accelerates his identity shift. After a relapse, he creates a quick restart. Nothing dramatic. No huge plans to compensate. He returns with a micro-action. Reading 3 pages. Training for 5 minutes. Organizing a drawer. It is the small restart that restores the rhythm. He realizes that the mind does not need perfection. It needs movement. And each small movement reactivates his inner power and reopens the path ahead. He learns to avoid all or nothing thinking, which destroys careers, diets, and lives. This thinking creates the lie that if it is not perfect, it is not worth it. But he realizes that real progress is irregular, full of curves, pauses, and returns. So, when he fails, he does not throw everything away. He only adjusts the step, and this simple adjustment keeps his relentless consistency intact. To minimize future relapses, he observes triggers: lack of sleep, stress, disorganized environment, excess tasks. He does not blame himself, he blames the structure. And then he reorganizes. He sleeps better, reduces distractions, simplifies the day. He understands that discipline is not only inner strength, it is external strategy. This combination increases his inner power and leaves him more shielded for the next challenges. He also learns that healthy rewards help avoid relapses. Not huge rewards, but small celebrations, a relaxing shower, a light book, a walk in the sun. These rewards do not sabotage the process. On the contrary, they reinforce self-discipline. He realizes that consistency does not need to hurt. It needs to be sustainable. And this sustainability prepares the ground for something even more advanced. When relapses happen repeatedly in the same areas, he identifies patterns, maybe always at the same time, or after talking to someone, or during chaotic days. He identifies, writes it down, and corrects. He starts seeing the relapse as a practical class, not a punishment. Each analysis strengthens him and reinforces his identity shift, and this perception naturally leads him to the next step of the journey. In the end, he understands that dealing with relapses requires emotional maturity. The fall does not define, the return defines. The rhythm does not matter, not stopping does. And when he returns with lightness, strategy, and relentless consistency, he discovers that he is even stronger than he was before falling. This understanding prepares him for something crucial, tracking his own progress intelligently, exactly what the next topic brings. He realizes that tracking progress is not vanity, it is clarity. When he measures what he is doing, he can finally see what is working and what is not. It is like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly everything has shape, and by seeing these small advances, he naturally strengthens his inner power and increases his relentless consistency. Because visible progress fuels invisible discipline, he begins using simple tools, a notebook, a habit app, a calendar full of excess. He discovers that the value is not in complexity, but in constancy. He writes down 3 small daily victories. Drank water. Read 4 pages. Trained 12 minutes. These proofs, small but visible, strengthen his self-discipline and keep him aligned with the identity shift he is building day after day. He notices that tracking progress prevents burnout. Without records, every day looks the same, and the brain feels that nothing is evolving. But when he looks back at the marks of previous days, he sees progress that he had not even noticed. This perception regenerates his motivation and protects him from the false sensation of stagnation. Tracking becomes an emotional shield. He realizes that tracking his actions keeps him honest with himself. Without numbers, it is easy to lie to oneself. I did more than I think. I'm doing fine. But numbers never lie. When he sees the truth on paper, he grows, even if it hurts. And this sincerity reinforces his inner power and makes his evolution more conscious and strategic. He begins to notice patterns in his track days. He sees, for example, that sleeping well increases productivity, or that training early improves mood. He adjusts his life not based on guesswork, but based on data. This conscious adjustment gives him more control, which strengthens his self-discipline. He sees that small changes generate big shifts. He also discovers that tracking can be fun. Each check mark becomes a small celebration. Each completed habit becomes dopamine. He turns weekly goals into a game, and games are much easier to maintain with relentless consistency. He understands that the brain loves progress, and showing progress every day keeps him engaged. He starts doing weekly reviews. What worked? What didn't? What can be improved 1%? These micro-adjustments accumulate. They make him more strategic, faster, sharper. He begins to grow not only through effort, but through intelligence. And this intelligence reinforces the identity shift he has been forming. In the end, he realizes that tracking progress is like speaking to his future self. Each action recorded is a message saying, "You are moving in the right direction." And this message, repeated day after day, opens the way naturally to the next topic, eliminating excuses, one of the strongest steps in the entire journey. He begins to notice that excuses are comforts disguised as logic. I didn't have time. I was tired. It wasn't the right moment. But each excuse silently steals a piece of his growth. So he makes a bold decision. Stop obeying his own sabotage. This requires self-discipline, courage, and relentless consistency. And he realizes that he already has all of that inside him. He starts asking a different question. How can I solve this? This simple change destroys most excuses. No time. Adjust something. Tired? Do less. Lack of desire? Start small. He realizes that there is always at least one possible step. And when he sees this, his identity shift gains strength because he begins to act from possibilities, not limitations. He realizes that excuses do not disappear. He simply stops obeying them. When the mind says, "I can't," he responds, "I can, but I will do it my way." This playful internal challenge reinforces his inner power because it puts him back in command of his own actions. He stops being a servant of feelings and becomes a leader of decisions. He reorganizes his environment, so that excuses have less space to grow. He keeps the phone far away, limits television, simplifies his routine. He realizes that excuses grow easily in the wrong environment. When the environment is well structured, discipline becomes almost natural. And when discipline flows easily, relentless consistency becomes inevitable. He begins to choose his circle more carefully. He realizes that people who act elevate him, while people who justify everything drain him. He starts treating his social circle like he treats books. He keeps only what helps him grow. This protects his energy and reinforces his identity shift because he surrounds himself with people who act, not people who postpone. He creates small personal rules to eliminate excuses, such as no complaining before acting. Replace "I can't" with "how can I?" If I thought about starting, I start in 3, 2, 1. He realizes these little internal codes make self-discipline lighter because they remove emotion from the decision and leave only action. He sees clearly that excuses often come from a lack of clarity. When the mind is confused, everything seems harder. So he chooses one essential action per day. Just one. This simplicity dissolves excuses and strengthens his inner power. The clearer the direction, the easier it is to move. In the end, he understands that a mindset without excuses does not mean living without errors. It means living with responsibility. Imperfect action will always be better than perfect excuses. And this understanding prepares him for the next level, mastering repetition, exactly what the next topic brings. He begins to notice that mastery does not come from epic moments, but from repetition that seems boring, the kind that most people avoid. It is repetition that strengthens his inner power and his relentless consistency. Each repetition is a silent vote for who he is becoming. He realizes that the least glamorous path is always the most effective, and this realization changes the way he sees the process of growth. Repetition generates familiarity, and familiarity generates confidence. Everything seems difficult at first, but after enough repetition, resistance weakens. What once felt heavy becomes natural. What once demanded effort becomes instinctive. And this expanding naturalness strengthens his identity shift because he begins to act from identity, not from effort. As he repeats, he starts noticing micro details that were invisible before. A cleaner movement, a clearer sentence, a quicker decision, a calmer mind. He realizes that repetition increases sensitivity, and this sensitivity is the doorway to mastery. He understands that this refinement does not happen in big leaps, but in small repetitions that accumulate silently. He sees that complex skills follow the same principle: playing an instrument, speaking in public, learning a language, building a business. Everything improves through repetition. He understands that talent may start the journey, but repetition finishes it. And realizing this makes him feel in control of his own evolution, because repetition depends only on him, not on his mood. Repetition also creates something invisible: speed. What used to take 30 minutes now takes 5. What used to cause insecurity now causes clarity. He realizes that repeating with consistency compresses time. It shortens the path. It accelerates results. Masters do not seem fast because they were born that way. They seem fast because they repeated more than everyone else. To strengthen this process, he begins systematizing his repetition. Fixed times, minimum daily goals, simple rituals. He even makes small jokes with himself. I will repeat this until I can do it in my sleep. Humor makes the journey lighter. And when the journey is lighter, relentless consistency becomes easier. This lightness creates a rhythm that carries him forward. He begins to notice that repetition also builds emotional strength. When he trains consistently, he becomes resilient. He begins to endure boring days, tired days, uninspired days. He acts even when the mind complains. And each action repeated under discomfort reinforces his inner power in a deeper and more permanent way. In the end, he realizes that repetition transforms intention into result, desire into reality, and effort into mastery. Repetition is the bridge between who he is and who he wants to become. And it is with this understanding that he prepares himself for the next part of the journey, the one that closes the audiobook and calls him to action. In the end, everything comes down to a choice: to continue living based on motivation, which comes and goes like smoke, or to embrace daily repetition and build something that no one can ever take from you. After everything you have heard here, it becomes impossible not to see the obvious. You always had the ability. What was missing was consistency. Now you know exactly how to create it. So I ask you, are you going to keep waiting for the perfect day? Are you going to keep believing that you need to feel ready to start? Or have you finally decided to act like the person you want to become? The truth is simple. Your life changes when your actions change, not your wishes. And if you repeat the basics every day, even the impossible starts to feel inevitable. Look inside yourself for a moment. What have you been avoiding for weeks? What habit do you already know you need to start? What excuse are you still using to justify staying in the same place? And above all, who do you want to be 1 year from now? Because, whether you like it or not, you are building this person now. Through what you repeat and through what you avoid. You deserve a life of high performance, clarity, mental strength, and direction. But that only happens when you decide to stop waiting and start repeating. Not tomorrow. Not on Monday. Not when life becomes calmer. The moment is now. In the next minute. In the next small step. The strongest version of who you are is one habit away. And you know that. Before you leave, answer this in the comments. What is the minimum action you are going to repeat starting today? Write it down. Declare it. Commit yourself. And if this content helped you, if it opened your mind, if it pushed you even 1 millimeter toward your better version, then subscribe to the channel and activate the notifications. You will continue receiving content that strengthens your discipline, your focus, and your inner power day after day. The journey has begun. Now it is up to you to repeat. Always.